Hi, guys. Welcome to another episode of our podcast, Talent First. Today, we have a guest who I met at a party and we started talking, and I guess we talked for like an hour and a half. And what I understood was that his journey in the analytics space is very different than what a usual journey is. He's a person who I saw had the ability to put a pause button to his growing career and to retrospect and look at the next 10, 15 years. So today our goal is to learn from what mistakes he has done, his successes, and how can we all uh, be more like him or learn more from him. So hi Kaushik, hi, how are you?
Hi Raghav,
क्या चल
pleasure
रहा
to
है?
be here. All good. Abhi, there's a lot of, I would say, pleasant silence. Otherwise, in a fast-paced 22 years, भागा दौड़ी बहुत हुई 22 साल में. तो अभी सोचने का time मिला है कि what to do next. So in a good space right now, where I can take a step back, enjoy the morning coffee, not being driven by a calendar. I think it can be a bliss. So enjoying every moment of it. But yeah, I think in a very interesting stage before I jump into my last 10-15 years.
Tell me one thing, right? And before हम समझे क्या है, आज आप, if I'm not wrong, आप you are not doing a full time job, right?
Yep.
आप 4 महीने पहले 5 महीने पहले कर रहे थे, या 3 महीने पहले, 3 महीने पहले कर रहे थे. एक तो आपने बोला कैलेंडर नहीं है, बट करते क्या हो आप पूरे दिन, मतलब व्हाट डू यू डू होल डे?
Very interesting. So, of course, after coming out of my calendarized life, the first 1 or 2 weeks was a huge vacuum, right?
बहुत बोर नहीं होते?
नहीं, first 1 or 2 weeks चली जाती हैं कि what do you do? Suddenly you are spending more time with your family. वो भी हैरान है कि अच्छा ये तो अभी और ज़्यादा available है. So I think then gradually you start, kind of making the most of it, most of the time that is available to you, because you start realizing when you look back, there were a lot of lost times where you could not be in those morning breakfasts, you could not be in those lunches, you could not be in the garden working with your wife, right? So I think that's where you start seeing the benefits of it, and it also helps you to take a step back. थोड़ा सा ठहराव आ जाता है life में. And then you start introspecting you have been running around for good 20-22 years doing things that you probably wanted to, or things that probably others wanted to, driven by a goal, objective, OKRs, whatever you can call it. Now suddenly you have a lot of control on how you spend your time, so you can be more deliberated. Of course, at the back of the mind you have it ki this is not permanent. Somewhere maybe I have the feeling ki ये is coming more from the lost time that I've had in my life I'm making up. I'm sure after a few months when I get into something, if something comes across and I like, again I'll be blocked and trapped by the calendar. But जब तक ये है, enjoy करते हैं.
Perfect. So Kaushik, let's take a step back. आप थोड़ा जर्नी के बारे में बताओ अपनी, and tell us कि कलकत्ता के पास you were born, right? Tell us about the town,
Right.
and tell us about your first 15-20 years of schooling and all of that.
Good. So that's itself is a big story. But I was born in a city called Asansol. My maternal part of my family was from there. It's in an industrial city, but I was born there. But you can say my childhood was mostly in the various districts of West Bengal. My father was a civil service, bureaucrat in the state.
What was he doing?
He was initially from the time I knew, he was probably the ADM of our district.
काफी चलती होगी फिर आपकी.
हाँ, तो the I would say the images I have from that time was staying in the British bungalows, because when you are in those small district headquarters, the
Tall ceilings.
administrative heads would stay in those bungalows, and there would be like lawns and big ceilings. In fact, I remember seeing the pankhas. You used to do the pankha pullers, right? In one of those cottages, it was in Krishnanagar, Nadia district, and he was ADM there, and that's where we would see those things still there. Of course, it was more of a relic. But I had the experience of growing up in smaller towns, even though in a very closed ecosystem, because it was the administrative circles. I have seen, the village from a distance. I would not say I was a village person. I could not go out and climb trees or go into the ponds, but I would see a lot of nature.
थोड़ा एक क्वेश्चन है, मतलब कई लोग पूछते हैं कि जैसे IAS ऑफिसर या मतलब सिविल सर्वेंट्स होते हैं, स्पेशली आपके डैड के लेवल पे, उनको मतलब बहुत पावरफुल होते हैं वो, और आपने वो बड़ा एज अ किड देखा है आपने वो, थोड़ा बताओ कि मतलब क्या मतलब होता क्या है? कई लोग हैं, दे आर वेरी कंफ्यूज्ड, कई लोग जो देख रहे होंगे उनने आईएएस बनने का कभी ना कभी सोचा होगा. सो आज आप पीओवी दो, पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू फ्रॉम द फैमिलीज व्यू पॉइंट, कि आईएएस की या सिविल सर्वेंट की फैमिली में होना क्या होता है.
वो आईएएस वाली जर्नी मेरी शुरू हुई थी, फेल भी हो गई, तो उसके बारे में बात करेंगे. ऑफ कोर्स इट हैज़ टू बी देयर, राइट. माय फादर, फॉर सेवरल रीजंस, so he came from a very small village, and he whatever he did by himself. So he became a West Bengal civil service official by his own merit. He had the vision of becoming an IAS officer, could not. So somewhere he had that dream within me. I tried, could not succeed. We are here today, right? But the few images that I remember of him from those days, one was very vividly, it was a district setup and he was gheraud by villagers.
Wow.
Right? So we got the phone. So ये छोटे छोटे जो moments हैं, ये अभी मतलब I
मतलब
remember.
घेर ली उस टाइम में, इंटरनेट कुछ नहीं था.
नहीं
तो
फोन आता है घर में कि
लैंडलाइन, not even on
लैंडलाइन, वो रिंग वो वाला फोन, डायल वाला फोन, जो probably most of the viewers might not even know. My daughter doesn't know. So I had to show her a picture. ये वैसे फोन होते थे, जीरो इतना घुमाना पड़ता था. So we get a phone and Mr. Das is Gheraud, and the guys who have Gheraud have called. Because it was for a cause, so they are like,
ब्लैकमेल कर रहे थे, क्या कर रहे थे?
don't worry, we have Gheraud him, he will not be coming in till our demands are met, but everything is fine.
बड़ा कॉमन चीज है ना, तो गाँव बहुत जगह होता है.
So that I remember. The other thing vividly I remember is whatever, so he would go to the district and गाँव में वो जाते थे टूर्स के लिए, तो मुझे लेके जाते थे साथ में, because there was a car, he had a security, he had a driver.
अच्छा, एम्बेसडर
नहीं, वो जिप्सी हुआ करती थी. तो जिप्सी हुआ करती थी, and I loved the gypsy because some of the other officers had ambassadors, but I loved the gypsy.
रफ टेरेन में अच्छी चलती थी ना.
So he would go to the interiors, villages. So I traveled a lot. तो उसमें I could see the life, which probably was still at a distant. I did not have the experience of that life, but I could see what the villages look like. If I go back to my childhood paintings, I would still see some of those figures and all. So वो एक vivid image दिमाग में है. The other thing I very vividly remember is whatever, when I was in standard 3rd or 4th, however late he was, he would always come home and if it was exam times, he would spend some time with me just for a discussion कि थोड़ा बातचीत कर लेते हैं, कल क्या पेपर है, इंग्लिश है, मैथ है, थोड़ा डिस्कशन कर लेते हैं. So I think these are few memories.
प्रेशर था आप पे कभी? बिकॉज मेरे को ये अंडरस्टैंडिंग है, आपके डैड जो थे, ही वाज अ आउट परफॉर्मर, राइट, कंपेयर्ड टू जहाँ से वो आए. यूजुअली जो ऐसे डैड्स होते हैं वो अपने सन डॉटर के साथ भी जाते हैं कि जैसे मैंने लीप वॉक किया, 3-4 लेवल्स को मैंने किया, तुम भी वही करो. एंड आई एम श्योर एडुकेशन आपके घर में बहुत बड़ा, आई एम श्योर होगी बात. तो कभी आपको लगा कि बिकॉज आपके फादर ने लीप फ्रॉग किया है, आपसे भी वही एक्सपेक्टेशन है?
इंटरेस्टिंग, बिकॉज जब तक ये एहसास होती है कि नाउ यू हैव टू थिंक मोर कंस्ट्रक्टिवली अबाउट योर फ्यूचर. हिज डिस्ट्रिक्ट स्टिंट्स वेर ओवर and then he was more in the secretariat, Calcutta. So that journey was very different. Then you were in an urban setup. You were going to a school. I think one of the things which I'm really thankful is at that point of time, when I'm talking about early 90s, he was, kind of forward-looking enough to send me to an English medium school because somewhere he felt कि जो communication है is very important.
Liberalization भी हुई थी ना उस time.
हाँ, so I went to a English medium school which was very far from my home, even within the urban setup. So from 6th standard onwards, I had to travel a lot in trains and buses alone and do that and do all of that. And the school I came from, I was in the first batch of CBSE, so it got affiliated. So there was a lot of focus that way. But to be honest, I don't think there was a pressure. He wanted us to become, something very specific. He was like, you have a good education, but somewhere we saw him as, a good administrator. And that is where I felt that let's start with that. So my first inclination was to sit for the civils, both for the states and the IAS. Tried twice, prelims clear नहीं कर पाए, so figured out कि नहीं ये नहीं हो रहा है. And one of the things is in those days there were not many choices for folks coming from our part of the society. You either had to choose quickly and choose wisely.
तो ये आपने क्या एज थी आपकी जब आपने सब ट्राई किया? 17-18?
हाँ. So I sat for the mains, civils, and then
प्रिपेयर किया था आपने, ऐसे ही बैठ गए थे?
नहीं, prepared.
प्रॉपर मतलब ट्यूशन वगैरह जाते थे आप?
We did the preparation.
मतलब 1.5-2 साल प्रिपेयर किया होगा आपने?
जी.
तो जब नहीं हुआ तो क्या डिप्रेशन वगैरह, मतलब क्या हो गया? मतलब मैं कई लोगों से बात करता हूँ एंड नाउ तो देयर आर मोर चॉइसेस, जैसा आपने बोला. सो पीपल नो कि अगर ये नहीं हुआ तो 10 तरीके और हैं काम करने के, रोजगार के, पैसे कमाने के. आपके टाइम पे जैसा आप बता रहे हो, चांसेस, ऑप्शंस कम थे, एंड सॉर्ट ऑफ आपके डैड की भी उम्मीद थी आपसे कि जो मैं नहीं कर पाया वो तुम आए, मैं
हो जाती
अंडरस्टैंड,
हो जाती है.
तो वो आप नहीं कर पाए.
नहीं.
तो फिर क्या हुआ?
I think so. This definitely was a setback. When I did not get the second time, it was a setback, but it was not a bigger setback than what I faced after my masters. So post my masters, I definitely
कहाँ से की थी मास्टर्स आपने?
masters मैंने की थी Presidency College Calcutta, which is definitely a
Very well known.
very well known name, and I did it in zoology with genetics and molecular biology.
What is that? Zoology, genetics.
मतलब the overall subject is zoology, but my specialization was in genetics and
Zoology होता क्या है?
animal science. So plants, animals, all things animals is zoology.
और क्या करता है आदमी zoology पढ़ के यूजुअली?
Usually you go into, see at that point the goal was कि आप पढ़ो,
Research करोगे.
research करो, thesis करो, और पढ़ाई करो. So somewhere, but I loved the subject. There were facets of the subject which I loved, especially some of the elements where there was statistics involved, and we got trained by some of the best. Like the statistics department of Presidency College in those days was pretty much renowned.
Yeah.
So for zoology, we had a lot of statistical, analysis that we had to do as an outcome of the experiments and interpret the results. So I think some of those things, were pretty interesting. Had different set of dreams कि मैं ये करूँगा, वो करूँगा.
क्या?
In the sense, go and do some research, in human genome, genetic engineering.
जो लोग रिसर्च करते हैं वो टीचर्स भी होते हैं ना साथ में?
साथ में टीचर्स भी होते हैं, फिलोसोफर्स भी होते हैं, और अब पता चलता है कि उनकी आधी ज़िंदगी मतलब पढ़ाई में ही चली जाती है. तो बट एट दैट पॉइंट वो नहीं था कि इसको आगे लेके जाना है, एंड देन डेफिनेटली मे बी गेट अ गुड जॉब इन अ गुड कंपनी इन यूएस फ्रॉम अ रिसर्च पॉइंट ऑफ व्यू.
टेल मी वन थिंग, एंड मैं एक चीज़ बोलना चाहूँगा कि यू आर टॉकिंग एंड यू आर टेलिंग मी एज अ किड यू यूज्ड टू स्टैमर अ लॉट.
ओ या.
नाउ इफ यू वर स्टैमरिंग अ लॉट, माय अंडरस्टैंडिंग इज आपका ये था कि मैं बैक एंड में काम करूँगा, मेरे को बोला नहीं आता लोगों से, मैं काम में मेहनती हूँ, स्मार्ट हूँ. ये रिसर्च वाज दैट वाज द रीजन व्हाई यू वांटेड टू रिसर्च?
Subconsciously, probably yes,
Probably,
because
right?
I wanted to stay out of limelight.
Yeah.
I did not have a huge or high self-esteem because as a kid I used to stammer a lot. I mean, and this is something I think many of my close acquaintances know that I did that. And
Till when? What age?
This happened even beyond my masters. I'll tell you, in my masters, I had to present one of my papers in front of a big group, and I was not able to utter good afternoon. The stammering was so much.
और ये स्टैमरिंग होती क्यों यूजुअली?
It's a mental state, what I know of it, and maybe there are, more learned.
तो टेक्निकलिटीज बताओ, आप स्टैमरिंग बाय बर्थ होती है या बन जाती है क्या?
For me, I think it was from the time I started speaking, I had it, and it can be triggered by some trauma, some experience somewhere. I mean, उतनी मैंने R&D की नहीं है, but I think my whole childhood was kind of grappled with it. So I got bullied a lot.
Really?
In the sports, in the class. Even though I was the top performer in the class, I got bullied because there were certain things that I was not able to do, like go and do a extempore speech, be the speaker in the assembly. These were things I was not able to do, irrespective of me.
Is it also because your economic background? If I try to understand the kind of places your father was posted in, my understanding is at that time, from economic or social viewpoint, you were at the tier 1 of your class. I'm trying to think, right? And was that also a reason why you were a bit alienated from the rest of the people?
Tier 1, so by the time I was in 6th or 7th.
फिर तो आप मेन शहर में आ गए, तब नहीं था.
शहर में आ गए.
फिर नहीं था.
तो तब मैं अच्छे स्कूल में जा रहा था, इंग्लिश मीडियम में पढ़ रहा था, but everything was fine. But वो वाला जो होता है कि क्लास में your numbers are coming great, your report card is looking good, but then when you are given a choice to speak in the assembly, वो वाला जो visibility होती है वो कभी नहीं है.
दोस्त नहीं थे आपके हाउस में?
दोस्त थे, and I'll tell you what, few things that really helped me out at that point was probably I was good in singing. Right?
Achha? Are you still good in singing?
I don't know, because I'm not
Let's
not
try.
trained.
Let's try.
I'm not trained. I'm not trained. But
नहीं, कुछ हो जाए अगर आप चाहो तो, एक छोटी सी मतलब कोई कुछ भी, मतलब अच्छा नहीं लगा एडिट कर देंगे बाद में.
हाँ, so we can go into that. I have to think. Let me think of what I want to
Sure.
in this to this.
But we will do it. We'll do it. I'm telling you.
We can try it out.
Yeah.
But the point is, I think that gave me an outlet. कि हाँ, ये एक जगह है जहाँ पे I don't stammer and I can still express myself.
Yeah.
So I think that went in. Photography was something that I got attracted to at a very early age when I was in ninth. And by photography I mean the good old ways of where you get into a dark room, आप negative निकालते हो, उसको धोते हो, टांगते हो, लाल light लगाते हो, उसको enlarge करते हो. So I got in touch with, I mean, there was a neighbor who was a professional photographer, so I was sort of kind of with him. I learned that trick from there. And when I went to higher classes, जब भी 10th 9th 10th में आप होते हो, 11th 12th में ज़्यादातर you start your first cigarette and stuff like that. For me it was important at that point to save money and buy those reels, क्योंकि तब वो एक्सपेंसिव बहुत होते थे. वो कोडैक के जो रील्स आते थे ISO 100 ISO 200 वाले, कैमरा एक पुराना हुआ करता था. सो फॉर मी इट वाज मोर इम्पोर्टेंट टू फाइंड दैट एवेन्यू एंड एक्सप्रेस माई सेल्फ rather than spending the money in, let's say, buy a pack of cigarettes.
मगर अगर फोटोग्राफी नहीं होती तो आज आप चेन स्मोकर होते.
I don't know, but this is how life has turned out to be, right? And photography was a big avenue out. Let's say music was a good avenue out, but the stammering stayed with me.
म्यूजिक में आप गाते थे, if I'm not wrong, तो स्टैमरिंग तब नहीं होती थी.
नहीं,
ये क्या मतलब?
बिल्कुल नहीं. And that was, I don't know the logic behind it, but that for me was the most liberating thing. And
Wow.
not that we had a huge band or something, ऐसे ही गाते थे, मतलब 3-4 दोस्त मिलके, but I felt that was something I could do without stammering. And for me that was like, हाँ ये मेरा zone है कि यहाँ पे that thing is not inhibiting me. So and that continued.
तो फिर खत्म कब हुई स्टैमरिंग आपकी?
Stammering khatam hui after probably I got the first big jolt in my life when after my masters, when all that whatever dreams were there to go abroad, study and all of that got shattered. Somehow it didn't work out that I would go and
Financially or what?
Not financially, probably few things within the college and the way the names get
Fair
selected.
enough.
So it's more of the procedural part
Got
of it, but somehow
Yeah.
bottom line is nahi hua. And my journey in accepting that कि ये नहीं हुआ और इसके लिए मैं कुछ नहीं कर सकता अभी, it is beyond my control. So I think that aspect where something disastrous has happened and I don't have a control on it, I think that was the first big jolt in my life, right? And I think that is where probably we can say that it's a change that is impacting you. I went into a depression.
अच्छा.
Now I can call it depression, but उस ज़माने में awareness होती नहीं थी. उस ज़माने में you did not have this much of awareness कि why somebody has gone quiet, why is somebody suddenly showing behavioral things, and I did not know what to do at that point because I never thought of a different career stream other than academics. And I loved academics. Probably at some point I would have taken a teaching or maybe more of a low profile role in a big pharmaceutical organization, whatever it could have been. But I never thought कि वो option मेरे लिए बंद हो जाएगा. I think out of that, suddenly I realized कि gradually, maybe because of certain other things, ये जो stammering है, it's kind of gradually fading out because probably the sense of that I have to do something else right now.
Is it because your settings changed and now जैसे क्या होता है कि आपने बोला stammering is a bit to do with your mental block. And mental block ये है कि मेरे इन लोगों ने हमेशा मुझे stammer करते सुना है, तो मैं जब भी इनसे बात करूँगा ऑटोमेटिकली मैं stammer करूँगा, ये तो ऑलरेडी सुन रहे हैं. अब आप एक कोकून में थे टिल योर मास्टर पेरेंट्स वर फंडिंग यू मोस्टली, सो ककून ही, जब तक पेरेंट्स फंड कर रहे हैं ककून में हो. अब आप निकले दुनिया में, निकले, ज़्यादातर लोग जिनसे आप मिले वो आपसे कभी मिले नहीं थे लाइफ में, तो फर्स्ट इंप्रेशन इज द लास्ट इंप्रेशन. तो हो सकता है आपने शुरू में इतना एफर्ट डाल दिया हो कि यहाँ पे मैं नई चैप्टर शुरू करूँ, ऐसा तो कुछ था?
ऐसा probably yes, because the whole change of ecosystem always helps.
Yeah.
Also, since there was always a fear of public speaking, I practiced a lot.
Did you practice?
I practiced in the sense, made a conscious effort because ये तो पता चल गया था कि अभी जब वो मेरा academics मेरा साथ नहीं दे रहा है, so what I have is my education in an English medium school. थोड़ा बहुत English बोल लेता हूँ, लिख लेता हूँ, तो लिखना तो खैर it's all there, but when you were speaking, that was probably one of the USPs I had, and I had no other option but to hone it. So मुझे वो perfection में लाना था कि if I'm speaking, you should speak well, right? So that made me do a few things. I read up. Of course, at that point, I did not have the option of internet and all of that, but I read few things. I tried a few things, and gradually it happened. Gradually it happened. See, today after 22, 23 years, I'm here, right? I don't have that challenge anymore, right? But it was an effort in the initial first 2-3 years. My first job that I did demanded me to speak to a
कि दोस्त क्या ही कर रहे थे ना आप काम?
हाँ मतलब कॉलेज के बाद तब तो पता नहीं था क्या करेंगे क्या नहीं करेंगे. सो आई हैड अ गुड फ्रेंड इन माय मास्टर्स हु हैड अ कंप्यूटर एट होम एंड देन देयर वाज अ
ये 2001 की बात है.
2001 की बात है. And at that point, there was a massive computer literacy program that was going on in West Bengal, right? Where the banks or other organizations were employing people to come and coach their workforce on computer.
So my dad at that time built a whole business around computer education, and that was, I think he still says, abnormally like it changed the game. बिकॉज उस टाइम पे कंप्यूटर लिटरेसी की जो आप बात कर रहे हो एक बहुत बड़ा मतलब वैक्यूम था मार्केट में. सो वी डिड अ लॉट ऑफ कोलैबोरेशंस एंड जो आपकी वो होती है ना जो ट्रेन्स होती हैं कैलकाटा में उस पे यूज्ड टू डू द एडवर्टाइजमेंट. ही वाज टेलिंग मी एंड उस टाइम पे मुझे बता रहे थे वो 250 रुपये की किताब बेचते थे और उसकी कॉस्ट 20 से 25 रुपये होती थी. इतना वैक्यूम था मार्केट.
It was a massive sweep. It was a massive sweep and our clientele was very small. I mean, he would get through contacts कि अच्छा ये बैंक का ये फलाना ब्रांच है तो वहाँ पे 2 महीने का कॉन्ट्रैक्ट है. जाके जो वहाँ पे एम्प्लॉयज़ हैं स्टाफ है उनको सिखाना है कि जो आप अकाउंटिंग बुक्स में करते हो उसको कंप्यूटर में ऐसे करते हैं. कंप्यूटर ऐसे चलाया जाता है. इसको मॉनिटर बोलते हैं, इसको कीबोर्ड बोलते हैं, ये माउस है, यहाँ पे एंटर मारते हैं. देन यू आर डीलिंग विद पीपल हु आर प्रॉब्ली 2 generations before you, and not
Damn annoying.
It's a good training ground to be patient, right? Because that is where you also had to influence. You had to make them understand it's a new technology, and anything new always has a resistance, and especially when you are bringing in a gadget and you are saying ki those employees, whatever they did for the 20-30 years of their life, there is a much better way of doing it. Getting past that mindset, I think that probably very early on taught me that how you start influencing, how you help somebody understand the real values of what they are doing, and get that conversational approach going on in terms of convincing someone, right? And that was, I mean, I did that for about a year. Great memory.
How was it working with your friend? People usually have like very strong opinions, right? Ki I will never work with a friend or in a friend's company or whatever. How was that experience?
See, first of all, it was a friendship, and it was more of like, he wanted help. I needed to get something going because life was also happening. I mean, I was about, 22, 23 by then. थोड़ा सा वो भी होता है कि थोड़ा सा कमाने भी.
घर से प्रेशर था?
प्रेशर नहीं था. प्रेशर ऑफ कोर्स नहीं था because at that point, see, प्रेशर घर से नहीं था but
खुद से था.
Pressure was there from all around in the sense, when you see everybody else into something. Some of my friends go into into teaching, somebody has already got a job. So figuring out, because my trajectory until then was focused on a particular avenue.
यूएस जाना है, रिसर्च करनी है,
वो सब करनी है. तो दैट वाज देयर. सडनली वो ब्रेक हो गया एंड देन फिगरिंग आउट व्हाट इज द नेक्स्ट बस, व्हाट इज द नेक्स्ट लेन आई एम गोइंग टू टेक. तो इस बीच में जस्ट टू फंड योरसेल्फ एंड देन सडनली यू कैन नॉट जस्ट गो बैक टू योर स्पेस वेयर योर पेरेंट्स आर स्टिल फंडिंग यू. तो एक लाइवलीहुड था एंड आई थिंक सिंस वी वर इन गुड टर्म्स एंड माय फ्रेंड was also very passionately into music and all. So was good times. मजा आता था. We used to do a lot, not for long because he got a good break in Gurgaon. So he came out of that business. He went and joined a firm in Gurgaon. And this was I'm talking about 2002.
And that's when you joined Genpact.
सो नहीं वो ऐसे इतनी आसानी से नहीं हुई थी. वो उसमें भी थोड़ा सा
मैं वही सोच रहा हूँ आपके पास फॉर्मल नॉर्मली जेनपैक्ट टाइप जगहों में उस टाइम पे कुछ ज़्यादा था. देयर वर 2 ways. एक तरीका तो कैंपस, दूसरा आप पहले ही किसी बड़ी कंपनी एमएनसी में काम कर रहे हो या इन्फोसिस वगैरह में कुछ आपने शुरुआत में काम किया है वो तोड़ रहे हैं आपको वहाँ से. आपके बाद दोनों में से कुछ भी नहीं था.
अभी मैं कहानी बताता हूँ. तो ये जो दोस्त था मेरा वो गया गुड़गांव कि मेरे को जॉब मिल गया है. सो देन दैट होल थिंग व्हाट आई वाज डूइंग विद हिम काइंड ऑफ गॉट डिसॉल्व्ड. सो मैं वापस आ गया फिर फिगरिंग आउट व्हाट
क्या करना है नहीं. और आपका बैंगलोर में थे कहाँ थे?
नहीं, दिस वाज आई वाज इन कोलकाता.
अच्छा, वहीं
वेरी नियर टू कोलकाता.
तो अपने घर पे रहते थे?
घर पे रहते थे. फिगर आउट करते थे कि क्या करना है, अप्लाई करते थे.
तो कंफर्ट था मतलब
घर में था. लेकिन वही जो पुराने तरीके के एप्लीकेशंस होते थे, फॉर्म लेके पोस्टेज स्टैम्प डाल के पोस्ट ऑफिस डाल के, तो वो करते थे बिकॉज आई वाज नॉट अर्बन. My house was about 30 kilometers from the city. So it was still a suburban space, right? Now, this friend of mine, he wrote me a letter because मेरे तब email ID हुई नहीं थी. So he wrote me a letter that, I'm working in a multinational company.
Genpact थी वो कौन सी थी?
नहीं, that was Convergys. So he was working as a Microsoft support because he went to NIIT. So he had a BCA.
Trichy.
नहीं, in Calcutta only.
Okay.
So he had that under him. So he knew the computers. मेरे तो घर में कंप्यूटर भी नहीं था. So he said that KD, why don't you come? You'll get a nice working environment. मुझे रात में नौकरी करनी पड़ती है. I do a lot of talking over the phone.
BPO टाइप का जॉब था?
हाँ, उसका सपोर्ट था, L1 सपोर्ट था. This was I'm talking about 2000. And
Right.
the other thing he said was, which kind of still, I don't know why I still remember this, but in his letter he's like, you know what, the washrooms, वहाँ से पानी अपने आप निकलता है.
ऐसे हाथ डालो तो अपने बाद.
नहीं, वो लूज में से, like you don't have to flush. Automatic
wow,
हो जाता है. So
wow.
he wrote in the letter. For us, it was like a big thing, right?
Wow.
So finally, what I did in between that journey, I took some money from my parents, got into a train, came to Delhi.
अच्छा.
I roomed in with him, the same friend.
गुड़गांव में?
हाँ.
कौन तो सर याद है कहाँ पे था गुड़गांव?
नहीं, he was staying in Karol Bagh at that point of time. Karol Bagh में he was in a mess, so I roomed in with him for a few days. और he gave me leads कि आप यहाँ पे इंटरव्यू दो जाके. तो
क्या क्या लीड्स थी?
तो विप्रो स्पेक्ट्रमाइंड से लेके, अब आई डोंट इवन रिमेंबर द नेम्स, बट व्हाटएवर बीपीओज वे देयर,
जो भी थे.
हाँ, जहाँ पे अंग्रेजी बोलनी आती है, कंप्यूटर चलानी आती है, दैट्स इट, राइट. तो गिव इंटरव्यूज.
तो क्या मतलब आप कैसे करते? मतलब लेट्स से उन्होंने आपको बताया 6 कंपनी है. वॉक इन और
कि आज यहाँ वॉकिंग लग, सुबह उठ के हम लोग पेपर देखते थे.
अच्छा, पेपर पे इश्तिहार देते
आज यहाँ पे वॉकिंग लग रही है. फिर ही ऑल्सो बिल्ड सम कनेक्ट्स बाय देम. तो आज यहाँ पे वॉकिंग लगी है, कल वहाँ पे वॉकिंग
कितनी
लगी है.
रिएक्शन मिली?
I went for about 10-11 interviews
Wow.
in a span of 10-12 days.
मजा आया.
So had been there, इधर कभी गुड़गांव जाओ, कभी नोएडा जाओ, ये जाओ. So I think did all of that.
छठे साल के इंटरव्यू तक आपको पता था फॉर्मेट क्या है?
हाँ, फॉर्मेट पता चल गया, प्रोसेस पता चल गया, बट ब्रेक थ्रू नहीं हो रही थी. एंड द मनी दैट आई टुक फ्रॉम माई, वो खत्म हो गई. 500 रुपये बचा था.
कितने ले गए थे?
4000 लेके गए थे. 4000 लेके गए थे. अभी 500 रुपये बचा था उसमें से. एंड देन बाय दैट टाइम आई वॉज काइंड ऑफ अगेन ब्रोकन, बट नॉट दैट ब्रोकन एज आई वॉज, अगेन ब्रोकन. देन ही सेड कि ठीक है, मैं वापस चला जाता हूँ, अभी तो मतलब रुक भी नहीं सकता. सो देन आई बॉट अ टिकट, आई वेंट बैक होम. The only company that did not have a date in those 15-20 days was GE. तो जब मैं वापस घर आया, पता लगा कि जी का चल रहा है कैलकाटा में. दे आर डूइंग अ वॉक इन
कैलकाटा में?
हाँ, कैलकाटा में.
Wow.
सो आई गो देयर. अगेन आई डिड नॉट हैव ह्यूज एक्सपेक्टेशंस कि ठीक है, दिस इज द ओनली टिक दैट आई डिड नॉट हैव इन द लिस्ट, कर लेते. सो
और उस टाइम पे जी वाज लाइक द मेन थिंग,
बिग.
जैक वेल्च एंड
It was
big
huge.
thing,
It
right?
was huge. So went there. I still remember it was in Gadiahat. There was a room out there. सुबह में when I went in, there were about 200 people.
सब शर्ट वर्ट पहन के एकदम ड्रेस्ड,
टाई वाई पहन के. बट आई हैड द नॉलेज ऑफ द होल फॉर्मेट, बिकॉज 10 हाँ तो हो चुकी थी. हाँ, तो आई वॉज देयर. राउंड पे राउंड होते जा रहे थे. राउंड पे राउंड रिलैक्स तो नहीं बोलूँगा, बिकॉज हैड प्रेशर वो था कि बस अगर ये फिर से सोचना पड़ेगा क्या करना है, क्या मुझे फिर जाके टीचिंग ही करना है, बिकॉज सम ऑफ माई फ्रेंड्स वर लाइक टीचिंग में आ जा. इंटरव्यू दिया, राउंड्स पे राउंड्स होते जा रहे थे. फाइनली आई रिमेंबर आई वॉज देयर इन द मॉर्निंग, survived the whole day on a cake, जो छोटे छोटे केक्स आते थे. एंड देन 7:30 in the evening got the offer letter.
अच्छा,
as a process associate.
कितना मजा आया जब मिला ऑफर लेटर?
Loved it. Relief. I think
मतलब एकदम
what was relief? चलो कुछ आया हाथ.
याद है आपको वो फीलिंग आज भी?
जी.
You remember that
I
instant when you...
vividly remember the letter coming in. सपना करके किसी का सिग्नेचर हुआ था वहाँ पे. सपना. And the amount.
क्या अमाउंट थी?
Amount was 1,26,000 gross CTC.
साल की?
हाँ, that was gross.
Shit.
Right. That was the overall.
Wow.
That was CTC. Right,
God.
including all incentives and everything. But वही बड़ी बात थी. And I'm talking about 2002, जिसके पास कुछ है नहीं उसके पास.
आपने पहले मम्मी को बताया, किसको बताया?
तो तब तो फोन वगैरह नहीं, मतलब I just went home. The first person I told was my fiance, my girlfriend.
Oh,
right.
okay.
Because there was a lot at stake.
शादी वादी का भी था कि नहीं मिला तो शादी मुश्किल है and all of that?
नहीं, वो शादी का भी एक अलग कहानी बहुत है. लाइक शादी का भी एक अलग कहानी है. By that time we had done a registry marriage.
Oh,
of
amazing.
course with family's consent.
Okay.
Right. And then because I thought कि कुछ ना कुछ कर लूँगा, लेकिन कुछ हो नहीं पा रहा था. So I told her that look, got something, and told my parents. But the deal was within another 15 days I have to go back to Delhi.
सब मूव करना.
हाँ. So then I have to go back to Delhi. So went back to Delhi, joined GE. I think the first 1-2 years with Genpact was a tremendous learning ground of reorienting myself from the academic bent of mind, from all that I had experienced in the first 20 years, reorienting into a very different trajectory altogether. कि journey अभी ऐसे होगी.
मैं एक ऑब्जर्वेशन करता हूँ, मैंने नोटिस की है, जो शुरू में आपकी पहली जॉब होती है ना, a lot of people are there are two kinds of people that I see in the first job. People who are grateful and people who think they have been stuck, they deserve something more. People who are grateful, and I assume you were grateful कि भाई 15 बार छोड़कर खा चुका, मुझे कहीं नहीं मिल रहा. You were grateful. सबसे ज़्यादा आप भी सीखते हो. और हो सकता है आपसे कई ज़्यादा स्मार्ट लोग हों जो एक्चुअली could have learned more, but because they were annoyed कहाँ आ गया मैं, I could have done more, US चला जाता, वो कम सीखते हैं नहीं.
Very pertinent example. So in that small batch we joined, there were few other Bengalis who joined from the same process, right? उनमें से कुछ MA Economics, MSc Economics भी थे, मैं भी Masters था, right? But somewhere I had seen a full circle of dreams crashing, not happening. So I was grateful कि एक opportunity मिली है, एक रास्ता मिला है, चलते हैं, देखते हैं क्या होता है, देखते हैं क्या होता है आगे चल के. मतलब उतना कुछ खास है नहीं, and the process was transaction, AR and AP में. But some of those colleagues, they had like यार क्या कर रहे हैं हम लोग, MSc पढ़ चुके हैं, छपाई कर रहे हैं यहाँ पे. So somehow within 3-4 months they were out, right? And I'm sure they are doing something great in their lives. But I kept learning कि ये होता है, ऑर्डर टू कैश ये होता है, AR इसको बोलते हैं. एंड दोज वर द टाइम्स आई ऑल्सो डिड अ बिट ऑफ कॉलिंग. तो वो हेडसेट पहन के एक फेक एक्सेंट, फेक नेम लेके कॉल करना.
फेक एक्सेंट क्यों करते थे मतलब?
सो तभी एक कोनोटेशन होता था कि द US कंपनीज वेर नॉट वेरी कंफर्टेबल सेइंग दैट आवर बैक ऑफिस कॉल सेंटर इज इन इंडिया.
एंड व्हाई वाज दैट? Now they are comfortable.
So within my tenure only that barrier broke, and after a certain point we were allowed to use our right names. Even the operations manager.
क्या नाम था आपका?
मेरा नाम था Bruce Dawson.
Bruce Dawson.
Bruce Dawson.
Wow.
Right, and I'm sure if people from that group are looking at this interview, they would remember a Bruce Dawson.
Bruce Dawson.
I still know the friends. So there are people in Bangalore itself working in different companies.
Right.
I still remember their names, and we call each other by those names. So, Eric Wright, Adam Roswell, Rebecca Parker.
Bruce Dawson. What does it mean?
So I was told.
You made this name, or they told you this name?
So when I joined my day one, और मुझे पता भी नहीं था कि ऐसे नाम वाम रखे जाते हैं.
Bruce Dawson.
अब मैं कैलकाटा से गया, धक्का वक्का खा के एक ऑफर लेटर लेके मैं ज्वाइन कर गया. ओरिएंटेशन चल रहा है. तो द फर्स्ट डे आई हिट द फ्लोर, माय मैनेजर एंड शी इज अ वेरी नाइस लेडी, वी आर स्टिल कनेक्टेड. शी इज लाइक अच्छा तुम्हारा एक नाम देना पड़ेगा. मैंने कहा नाम तो है नहीं, एक नाम देना पड़ेगा तुम्हारा, एक कोई इंग्लिश वाला नाम बताओ. मैंने कहा नाम तो ऐसे कुछ नहीं आ रहा है. तो वट एवर नेम्स आई वॉज गिविंग वॉज फ्रॉम अ लिटरेरी कैरेक्टर. ये वो like no, give
Bruce Wayne उसको देख के किया था.
Bruce Willis. So I think the previous day or something in the newspaper or somewhere there was a Bruce Willis का picture and there was a Titanic वाला कुछ था. मतलब दोनों को मिला के जोड़ जाड़ के one of the other friends whose name was Adam Roswell, he also said
Adam Roswell.
Adam Roswell. Amarjeet उनका नाम है. Amar if you are seeing this. So he suggested कि ऐसे कर लेते हैं. So all of us joined together. So वैसे नाम पड़ गया. Right, और email IDs भी वैसे बन जाते थे. So we were servicing a third party, and then we were taken through a voice and accent training.
क्या थोड़ा आप बताओ कि एक्सेंट कैसा बना आपका, अगर याद हो तो?
उनको क्या करते हैं कि whenever you bring folks just to show that they have a neutral accent, उसको न्यूट्रलाइज करते हैं.
हमारा बड़ा थिक एक्सेंट होता है ना.
हाँ, कभी आप हरियाणा से आ जाते हो, बंगाल से भी आ जाते हो. Like unfortunately I did not have that Bengali accent. You know that Bengali accent.
Yeah.
I will talk to you whatever I feel like, and the way I will talk, you will know that I am a proper Bengali.
Yeah.
This is a
दिख
Bengali.
जाता है वो एंड में
हो जाता है, right? But somehow I did not have that. And so for me it was a smooth sail, but they used to teach funny things, roll the W's, case your R's.
थोड़ा कुछ example.
Whiskey, sugar, you should talk like that, when you open your call, say, hey, I'm Bruce Dawson, how can I help you today? So
अच्छा, मतलब you speaking well है, मुझे भी लग रहा है अगर मैं सुन.
तब तक मेरा स्टैमरिंग जा चुका था. तो एक अलग तरह की
लिबरेशन थी. आज सारा बोल दूंगा.
अच्छा ही हो रहा है, तो चलो you learn it, then you put a headset. बट स्वेटिंग उसमें भी थी जब फ्लोर में आ गए ट्रेनिंग के बाद. अब भाई आप ऑक्स में डालो, तो कबाया फोन्स हुआ करते थे. हेडसेट लगा के ऑक्स में डालो, कॉल करते जाओ, ये आपकी टारगेट है. और ब्रेक दिन में 1 घंटा, दिन में 1 घंटे का ब्रेक होता है आपका. और ब्रेक पे आप चले जाओ ऑक्स डाल के. अगर आप 1 घंटे से ज़्यादा ब्रेक इस्तेमाल कर लिए, पर्सनल ब्रेक, तो फिर महीने के एंड में आपका जो इंसेंटिव है वो आप उसके लिए एलिजिबल नहीं होंगे. एंड दैट इंसेंटिव वॉज वेरी डियर, बिकॉज 1,36,000 साल में काट छाट के हाथ में 9,760 रुपीज़ आते थे. 9,760 rupees was my take home at the end of the month. Yes, and if incentive was there, if I was an excellent performer, I would get 5,000.
Oh, that's very big.
So that was a huge. And if I was not an excellent performer, I would get 4,000. उसके नेक्स्ट 3,000. और अगर मैं 3-4 बार ऑक्स ब्रेक कर देता हूँ, मतलब 20-22 दिनों में अगर मैं 1 घंटे से ज़्यादा अपना ऑक्स ब्रेक ले लिया, तो आई विल नॉट बी एलिजिबल फॉर दैट. सो दैट मनी वॉज वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट.
सो ये जो ब्रेक होते थे इन कॉल सेंटर, व्हाटएवर यू कॉल देम, मैंने देखा कई लोगों को स्मोकिंग की हैबिट लग जाती थी. मैंने कई लोगों से बात की है जो ऐसे सेटअप में काम किया, उन्होंने बोला हमारे को स्मोकिंग की गंदी आदत लग गई. वो जो ब्रेक्स होते थे सब लोग करते थे. आपको नहीं लगी?
मेरे को तो स्मोकिंग की आदत पहले से नहीं लगी, बिकॉज रिमेंबर आई टोल्ड यू दैट यू नो इन कॉलेज एंड एवरी टाइम आई हैड दैट अपॉर्चुनिटी, बट फॉर मी एट दैट पॉइंट इट वाज इंपॉर्टेंट टू सेव दैट मनी. जो दोस्त लोग थे, एवरीबडी वाज इनटू स्मोकिंग, एंड बीइंग अ बंगाली, इफ यू आर नॉट स्मोकिंग एंड ड्रिंकिंग, आई थिंक समवेयर इट्स स्टिल कंसिडर्ड टू बी एन आउटलायर, राइट? मे बी टुडे इज अ मच मोर healthier generation, but in our days it was considered to be an outlier. True. Right? Like, you know, being a Bengali, you don't love rasgulla. I don't love rasgulla, by the way. So, you know, how can that happen?
Yeah.
But it happened for me. Because for me at that point, it was a prioritization that how do I use that money? And I used that money at that point to buy those films, which used to be very expensive. So for me, that passion was more important because it was giving me the liberated feeling that I could express myself. So, वो हुआ नहीं.
डिजिटल कैमरा नहीं था आपके पास?
तब तक तो नहीं था. डिजिटल कैमरा, आई रिमेंबर आई परचेज्ड माय फर्स्ट डिजिटल
Sony
कैमरा.
or Kodak?
It was Kodak. It had to be Kodak because I'll tell you, it was in 2006 June. I purchased it in my first trip to Canada.
Oh wow, एयरपोर्ट से लिया था? कहाँ से?
नहीं. So I was working for the Kodak, so we had to transition. So this was after GE. GE में थे तो गुड़गांव. I used to stay in Delhi, East Delhi, Jamnapar. Near ITO, and then would travel all the way to Gurgaon, do a night shift, come in the morning. So pura Delhi, and Delhi is very, very, you know, we are very fond of that. Both me and my wife, we saw our early days there. At any point of time, both of us are kind of spring up कि दिल्ली जाना है, चलो चलते हैं और जाएंगे, shopping करेंगे, खाएंगे types. So we are pretty good, but very fond memories. And then one of my other friends who was in GE, he got a job in IBM Bangalore. He came here, and I remember that was the time when the death of Dr. Rajkumar happened, and he was trapped and he was caught here, and he spoke to me saying that KD, there's a role, would you do it? So I was getting a double 100% jump in my salary.
Wow.
मैंने कहा ठीक है कर लेते हैं. और तब we were like very small setup था.
IBM, I'm forgetting the name of the leader. This was like, I remember, and I was talking to a few people. IBM was like the place to be at that time, like for a few years.
It was
early 2000s.
This was when, so this was a part of IBM Daksh at that point of time. This was the BPO part of it,
okay.
the business process part of it. So I came to Bangalore thinking कि ठीक है जाते हैं 2 साल थोड़ा फॉर्म बढ़ा लेंगे, we'll make the package healthier, maybe we will return back to Gurgaon. Never had the intent of settling down in Bangalore. We thought we'll come here.
And वो कभी हुआ नहीं.
And then I'm still here, right? But few things I remember from those days. So the office was in ITPL, near Vedahi, and the third-party client was based out of Canada. So after I come here, within a month, I found myself in Toronto. I had
passport था आपके पास?
हाँ, passport बना लिए थे because when I joined GE. Somehow I think for some reason
उम्मीद थी ऑन साइड भेजेंगे किसी
नहीं, ऑन साइड वाला उम्मीद नहीं था, but for some reason I think something was there. I had to do a passport, so passport बन गया था. Passport was there. So I went to Toronto with a group of others just to do a transition. Now the good part is कि I never had a knowledge of how to do a transition. But I was a part of that team taking a very critical point on doing a lift and shift because
what do you mean by transition, like from legacy to new?
काम चल रहा है टोरंटो में, जो कंपनी है उसके पास, और वहाँ से सीख के बंदों को लेके जाओ, सीखो, and then you lift and shift the whole thing.
Shadow office बना रहे हो?
हाँ, and then bring the whole work overall process was a big buzz. Process to IBM Bangalore, and then probably the parent company would shut those shops out there. And they would outsource. It was again economic leverage and all of that, right? So that experience, but the reason I say it was a fortunate thing is because that gave me an exposure to do something which otherwise I wouldn't have done. In my GE or IBM role, I was a lead analyst, lead FNA analyst at that point of time. But I got that opportunity of going there, kind of project managing or program managing the whole transition. It was supremely ambiguous for me. It was very ambitious for the leadership to send me out there. But I think somehow the transition went really well. We brought in the whole shop over to Bangalore. We set it up. It was kind of a very good exposure. GE, I think one good exposure I had was, of course, learning operations and then learning quality. But my first introduction and kind of exposure to Six Sigma, Lean, because you're in GE, you get definitely by default wo ho hi jata hai. And then the second part in IBM, the big part in those 6 months at IBM was on site. Go to Toronto, stay there, and my first exposure outside India, कैमरे भी वहीं से खरीदी थी.
Then target कैसे हुआ?
Very interesting.
And I think target मैं आपसे जब बात कर रहा था, आपने बोला था 2 experiences have been really critical in shaping you.
Yes.
One is Target,
Yes.
and the other is Kabbage, right? So let's
Bang on.
So let's first talk about Target and then Kabbage.
So I remember we came back from Toronto, and then I was settling down in the role, settling things up. I got a call from a recruiter. Like there's a company opening up. It's called Target Corporation.
सुना भी नहीं होगा आपने Target का नाम?
And the initial reaction was, who Target?
क्या Target?
Target कौन है? So then they explained, I gave an interview, I went, I was not selected.
It was a Fortune 500 company then also, no?
Yeah. Then we did a research. तब तक एक घर में कंप्यूटर आ गया था, मतलब लैपटॉप आ गया था. जोड़ जाड़ के we got a laptop. So did a research. ठीक है, चलो.
क्या है?
The big part was I was actually getting a broad people manager role, and the theme was again same. There were a few third party units going on with the bigger names, and Target wanted to bring them in house on the financial services. So the spectrum was good. Gave interviews. For some reason it didn't happen. And then I'm like, ठीक है, चलो छोड़ देते हैं, अब आगे मौका और आएगा, फिर IBM में अच्छा चल रहा है. But after a few months, I can get a call that for another role we feel you will be kind of a better fit. जाते हैं, बात करते हैं, things happened. So I was one of the first 100 to join Target India. This was December 2006. So I come to Bangalore May, 4 months in Toronto. December I join a new company. Office was in EGL, so Target just moved from their Bugmane office to EGL, and I was started with the Target Financial Services in some of their processes in compliance and business systems.
कितने साल रहे आप Target में?
Almost 10 years.
10 years.
Almost 10 years.
Wow.
And the reason I say that Target has been instrumentally foundational in shaping up my journey is because every 2.5 years, I got the opportunity of doing something new, something different, something ambiguous, something that was not very well chartered, and it was an effort to kind of chart it.
If you could change one thing about your 10-year stint at Target, what would that one thing be?
If I could change one thing, I don't think I would want to change one thing. Again, the thankfulness that you mentioned, right? The opportunities I got at Target were non-linear. Like, 2 years I was in financial services doing teams, with specific metrics hota tha, dashboards hota tha, and all of that, right? That was the run-of-the-mill stuff. But suddenly there was the need, analytics was happening. Data analytics was, kind of springing up. And I remember walking up to, one of the senior leaders' office, and these guys used to sit next to me, do some cool stuff. So I'm like, you are setting up this team, and I know statistics, but I'm not an analytics person, right? So would there be a space for someone like me in the team that you're growing? And I approached, and it was a very open door. And she explained to me something that they were doing at that point, a report. And I remember still that was an assortment analysis report, right? And she showed that, this is, analytics is in the back end, but understanding business is more important. So that is how I got hooked into it. Of course, there was an assessment that I went through. Thoda bahut, coding knowledge, SQL वगैरह करना पड़ा. I was trained, but what my role in shaping up those teams, I was into merchandising analytics at that point. My role was there to help build the operational fabric of the team and help set up the capabilities in Bangalore. And more importantly, we were kind of trying to make an impact in the headquarters in the way decisions were made for some of the key categories and positioning or whatever, the whole 9 years of merchandising, price pay, promotions pay, placements of items, all of those decisions were so through the GCC, and that was more of an experimentation as well, which we see a lot today. and things are more operational. But those were the experimentation days when we were doing the analytical approaches, and we needed the channel to go and let the teams in US use them for decision making and see the impact, and then gradually increase the throughput and output out of that. So every 2 years I went into merchandising analytics. I went into few verticals within that, and then came a time where I was also heading some of the new capabilities that the analytics team started at Target, vendor management, working through vendors, because now
Procurement basically.
not procurement, program आ रहा है उस पे
Budget allocation
build
basis.
versus buy. So this capability is not with us today, so we buy it, but how do you engage and embed them? So essentially I was kind of the in-house the conduit of using all those vendors, but still ensuring the output goes out to the desired state in the desired time. So I think there was a lot of, and things were still shaping up a lot, right? So I think lot of experiences happened. Few other things that happened at Target is when you grow from a organization which is 100 member to a organization which is 1,000 and 2,000 and 3,000, you learn a lot that's outside your core job. I still remember having extensive discussion with the teams when they were creating an onboarding curriculum, because as an organization onboarding was very important, orientation was very important, and had a huge role to play कि business knowledge कैसे इनको दिलाएंगे. Because today when you go out, let's say retail GCCs, there are a lot out there, right? You can definitely name a lot of retail GCCs out in Bangalore itself, but in those times I think there was Tesco, there was Target, that's it, right? So the essence of business,
Walmart Labs नहीं थी?
I don't recall, in 2006 it was there. It was way back in 2006. I don't recall. Maybe I'm wrong. But I think what we realized very early, and especially when I started in analytics, and I had some great leaders to work with, they were very receptive, very open. I think the essence of context became very important. Because analytics is a very quantified subject where you have numbers to interpret things. But unless that is tied and wrapped to a business context, which gives a meaningful output, it doesn't make sense. So somewhere we had to make sure that the folks who are doing a segmentation or doing pricing or doing optimization, they know what the actual business is. It was more of brick and mortar retail. Online was just about coming in there. What does the business do? How do we go about in our business? And for that, I think Target kind of invested a lot in us. Going there and learning and staying there. I remember.
Do you think that because you were initially working in a service company and then you go to Target, where it is more of a productized or consumer focused approach, because आप consumer से directly deal कर रहे हो, आपको initially एकदम से मजा आ गया कि यार ये तो एकदम ही ऐसा भी होता है. पहले आपकी जो क्राफ्ट थी टेक वाली, उसका एक रेट था, उसका एक अलग थॉट था, सर्विस ओरिएंटेड. अब आपकी क्राफ्ट जो थी थोड़ी एक जैसे होता है ना कि मतलब पहले आप बहुत मैनुअल काम कर रहे थे, अब आप जो काम कर रहे हो आपको दिख रहा है कि इसमें और बहुत लेयर्स हैं, हम सीख रहे हैं.
I think that came along with the progression of the journey. तब तक I spent at about good 4-5 years हो गए थे under the belt, right? So now I could really start connecting the dots, and by then I could also realize that I was more comfortable in dealing with, let's say, a bit of ambiguous situations. कि भाई unstructured है, इसको structure करना है. Right, so setting up processes, setting up mechanisms, setting up let's say काम US से कैसे आएगा, how to distribute within the teams, because I'm not talking about transactional volumes. It's not like a queue कि आप system में जाते हो, आपके लिए case assign हुआ है, आप उसको close कर दो. It is like, okay, across the spectrum we have candy, we have ready to drink, we have chocolates. Every business is having a pain point. How do you bring that in the overall scheme of things? How do you prioritize? यहाँ पे team, which are the projects they would work on? So essentially very early getting into the whole program management, project management aspect, and ensuring that the team in Bangalore is focusing on the right programs, right projects. The output is being delivered in the right way, and I was a part of that translator, retranslator roles that at that point the Target crafted. We used to call them business partners, where one part of me was in the business, because I was fortunate enough to get those exposures in the headquarters, spend time in the Target stores, learn about retail, push the cards, do the backroom shelving, scan the shelves. So वो hard coded है. मतलब जैसे स्टोर में होता है, वी हैड टू गो एंड डू ऑल ऑफ दैट. And once you do that, once you've been a part of that machinery, it gets embedded in you. And then the other objective was to come back and disseminate that knowledge, that expertise across everybody else. तो अगर एक project आता है, then how do the folks here who do not have exposure of shopping or seeing a target store are able to relate to the context? Because when you are in analytics space, when you are delivering business results in a quantified way, it's very important to understand the context. And one thing I've learned very deeply and very earnestly in that space is context is very important. So we worked a lot. I think we had some great leaders who sponsored it, but we worked a lot in designing how that context occurs. And I'll give you a small example. We kind of built in within the analytics space merchandising 101, 201, 301, where 101 was the basics. When you come in not knowing what merchandising is, we
You
tell
set
them,
up the structure.
Yeah, कि ये merchandising ये होता है, right place, right time, right price, the right promotion and all of that. So that was the basics, so that at least to get started. A 201 was more of getting in depth into the categories, transitions. How does a product transition? उस ज़माने में a transition for a particular category कि आप एक शेल्फ इस तरह से सजाते हो और फिर अगले सीजन में उसका पूरा चेंज कर दो.
ये भी आप लोग रन करते थे ना?
जी, that was the whole deal. That was the whole deal. That
Wow.
when a transition is happening, let's say chocolate is getting reset in September, right? And I have new brands that needs to be introduced, some brands to be taken out, pack sizes, press mints. How do you decide on all of that?
Proper advanced analytics की आती होगी.
So the analytics was a machinery running behind, but I think what I found the most intriguing part of it was after the analytics, the engine crunched out the results. While we were obsessed about our R squares and all the metrics, it was always the point of going and talking to the buyer and saying that, look, what we are suggesting is for your next reset in these stores, you need to bring down the facing of this pack size. और आपको ये पैक साइज यहाँ लगाना है लीड एंड में.
Amazing.
आपको ये बड़ा वाला पैक साइज नीचे की तरफ धकेलना है. सो दैट वाज एन इन्फ्लुएंस बिकॉज आई एम टॉकिंग टू समवन हु इज रनिंग दैट कैटेगरी फॉर लेट्स से 20-25 years and has always run that on gut feel. And now we have a team in a different geography who's probably not seen the business coming and saying that, hey, we have done some analysis and we feel this is how you should do it. Right. So I think that journey also taught a lot about how do you, kind of translate and retranslate and influence this, how you kind of have the analytics penetrate business decision making. So that was a big, big learning for me. And I'm very thankful of getting those opportunities. And uske hisab se we started getting projects. There were some interesting projects also, but that space, gradually once you start giving some results with one particular category, that buyer talks to the other buyer and word of mouth spreads. So gradually there was more pull कि भाई आपने उनके लिए ये करके दिया है, आप मेरे लिए भी करके दो. So that is how it started, and it was, I am talking about 2007, 8, 9. But more importantly, many of us got the chance of going there, and then bringing the context. So I was talking about 201. 201 was planning the transition. So किसी को अगर ये analysis करना है कि transition में ये होता है and then what goes in, they need to understand what transition is, what a category nuance is. So I think bringing that was a second level of training or a context setting. We termed it 201, and the 301 was like identifying key SMEs within the team and have them sent over to the headquarters or the home office for longer stint. This person is great in price optimization, and then we are trying to build a overall circular incrementality model. So it makes more sense for this person to be there and then first of all contribute in the live project, learn, come back in a much more enhanced way, and then kind of take the team forward. So we experimented with all of these models, and I think that worked really great. The other thing that happened at Target was I got the opportunity of working with some tremendous leaders. I mean, I've come.
Anyone in particular?
I've worked with Iqbal. I mean, she's a mentor. I look up to her. Pankaj, Mahesh, Anindo, Saikat. I mean, there are a lot. I'm not doing justice, but I've worked with a lot of leaders. Ankur, I think I've come in contact with many of them, learned a lot from them. And not only leaders, people who are leaders today, they've been my peers. And there was a lot that I learned. In fact, I did not come from a typical analytics background. So from each one of them, there were pieces that I could, kind of borrow, learn, sharpen up. And I've got a lot of support. And the bond that we have today goes beyond just that role. But really kind of that journey helped me shape up of how I would want to craft my leadership brand. So Target was kind of a school, a foundational.
Then Cabbage happens. And
Cabbage
Cabbage
was-
mein it's a whole circle, right?
Cabbage was interesting. Cabbage was interesting in the sense Target I'd spent almost 10 years. There were a lot of different things I did, and that was a time when that startup was doing a lot of buzz.
2015-16.
This was 2014 end.
फ्लिपकार्ट ने $1 billion उठाए थे उस टाइम
तो
पे।
that buzz was there कि
कुछ नया चल रहा है।
कुछ नया चल रहा है और there were a lot of thing कि CV में एक ये startup का experience होना चाहिए. So long story short, I somehow got connected to the founders, and we went through a series of discussion. But what I remember from that discussion was the JD was a simple one-liner: make India happen. Right? There was nothing kind of well crafted. There were no 17, 18
Make India
points.
happen.
Because Kabbage was a fintech based out of Atlanta. I know it's very dear to you, right? Because
I've stayed there.
of course. So they were looking at setting up a research analytics, risk analytics, data science sort of a unit in Bangalore, a very small office. And they were looking for someone who could not only own the delivery aspect of it, but also the governance, the entity aspect of it, and kind of play the all things Bangalore sort of a role. So it felt pretty good because by that time, 15 साल हो गए थे. G, IBM, Target, there were a lot of things I assimilated, right? I learned. So I thought it was a good time for me to start contributing. But it was a huge leap of faith also because I was in a life stage. Daughter was just about 1 year.
Oh.
Just about 1 year. So it was a huge leap of
Risk
faith.
था।
There was a lot of risk. Because
कई लोगों ने एडवाइस किया होगा टारगेट में इतनी बड़ी पोजीशन पे आ गए हो और ग्रोथ भी दिख रही होगी आई एम श्योर
it was a safe ride. मतलब car was in autopilot.
एंड ऑनेस्टली काम भी अब इतना नहीं होता होगा आई एम अज्यूमिंग
Work was going on great. I mean,
9 to 5 में निकल जाता था
it was great. I mean, things were in motion. There was nothing disruptive that was happening. But somewhere I felt that I had to do something different to move forward. वो थोड़ी जो होती है कि let's do something different. कुछ अलग करते हैं. And this proposition when it came, not that I was super aggressive about it, but the proposition when it came and finally it landed as an offer, felt it was a really great opportunity.
Yeah.
Right? That full blank slate. Company exist भी नहीं करती है, right? There's no notion of the company in India, so you have to start from ground zero.
Scratch.
Ground zero. मतलब inception of the company, which happened at my desk the address was my apartment.
लेट्स से किसी को कोई जीसीसी सेटअप करनी है ठीक है इंडिया में एंड लेट्स से उनकी भी आपकी फाउंडर्स से अच्छी बातचीत हो गई सिमिलरली कोई स्टार्टअप यूनिकॉर्न जो भी है उसको इंडिया में ऑफिस सेट करना है आप हमें अगर 5 या 7 स्टेप्स में बता सकते हो प्रोसेस वर्क कैसे करता है ब्रॉड लेवल टेक्निकलिटीज में नहीं क्या होती है हायरिंग क्या है पहले ऑफिस लो हायरिंग करो क्या करो मतलब हाउ डज इट वर्क
So I think, see, irrespective of whether it's a big GCC setup or a small setup,
50 लोगों का करना है
I think the first and foremost important point, and this is coming after my 6 years of
Experience.
Kabbage journey
Yeah,
and
yeah.
then the recent ones, is having the objective right.
तो पहले स्ट्रेटजी अपना रीजन क्या है वाई आर यू ओपनिंग इट
वो एकदम तगड़ा
क्या क्या ऑब्जेक्टिव होते हैं तो कॉस्ट होता है
देखो कॉस्ट मेनी टाइम्स यू वॉन्ट हियर इट
ऑब्वियसली होता है
बट वो आ जाता है
तो एक
right?
कॉस्ट
एक होता है कॉस्ट आ जाता है एंड नाउ इन टूडेज वर्ल्ड इट डिपेंड्स की कॉस्ट फॉर स्पेसिफिक रोल्स और मे बी टैलेंट बिकॉज वन थिंग आई बिलीव इज यू नेम अ टैलेंट यू गेट इट इन बैंगलोर राइट सो वो एक है नाउ कॉस्ट एक होता है दूसरा है again talent was another thing and the third thing is how do you leverage the time zones so I think that intent is very important what we want to do by not doing the work in our home location and then shifting it to the remote location
पहले ऑब्जेक्टिव क्लियर किया आपने
it has to be very objective from the sponsors from
Done.
the person who's endorsing it
which is a CIO kind of person
it can be CIO it can be a group of executives it can be the founders it can be whoever
Depending.
but the people who are taking the decision have to be very clear that in the next 3 to 4 years
क्या साथ
this is what we want to do out of the center I think it's non negotiable
तो वो सबसे इम्पोर्टेंट
That's
चीज
very
ऑब्जेक्टिव
right
नेक्स्ट
and then if something snowballs out of there that's a great story right but that objective is very clear and I think next definitely comes in figuring out how do we want to start do we want to start with a big bang or do we want to start small what would be our optimal size modus operandi
बजट एलोकेशन एंड ऑल ऑफ दैट
वो देखो once you decide and if there is an executive sponsorship budget allocation हो ही जाती है right but then figuring out how to go about it now there are particular ways of doing it.
क्या क्या होते हैं?
One, you know the tried tested way is, you know, you have so many consulting companies in the spectrum today who have mastered the whole process of setting up.
TCS and all you're talking about, smaller ones?
I think, you know, smaller ones are there. I mean, there are a lot. There are a lot today, right?
Sure.
And they're very, very popular names. You know, some are very celebrated, and they've done really
You're saying pure play companies also?
pure play. You know, you help the end-to-end setup.
Got it.
So I think that's one avenue. And then companies which probably are not able to have a budget to take that avenue, they probably would look for a more independent sort of a setup.
Where they'll hire a person like you.
In Cabbage's case, it was the case, right? What I believe is one of the investors were from India, and they kind of said that, okay, let's do it the
खुद ही कर लेते
second way. Let's do the second way. We'll do independently.
तो पहला वाला मॉडल तो होता है BOT, build operate transfer.
It's a big scale. Like we are talking
आपके
about-
वाले मॉडल में होता है कि खुद ही बिल्ड करेंगे,
हाँ.
अपना लोकल स्ट्रॉन्ग लीडर बनाएंगे, who will build it, like a local entrepreneur.
Get someone who is very much local, who will be the resident promoter of the entity.
Yeah.
So, and in Cabbage's case, it was a dual role. One was the entity part of it, and the other was also build up the team. अब टीम भी बनाओ, so talent, so everything, like whole 9 years of just setting up an organization.
तो पहला ऑब्जेक्टिव क्लियर किया हमने,
Objective.
दूसरा हमने किया कि स्ट्रक्चर कैसे करना है हमें,
Modus operandi.
हाउ डू यू वांट टू डू इट,
Exactly.
थर्ड क्या है?
Third would be, you know, as you open up, figuring out the critical milestones that, okay, you know, in the first 3 to 6 months or first 1 year, these are the things that we want to accomplish.
Okay.
Because it's not an overnight thing. It's not
Yeah.
a plug and play. कि आपने budget allocate कर दिया, and then within, you know, 6-7 months you will start seeing ROIs. It may happen, and that is great. It's a great story. But the chances are that it will take time, because you are assembling a team
Yep.
out of your, you know, the core working space. Remotely, so they have to go through a ramp up phase. And how does that ramp up phase look like? How does technology look? So there are a lot of things that needs to be, you know, ironed out. And for that, what's the core team who's going to do the setup? Because it's usually a team that moves, you know, everything. In my case at Cabbage, for the first 5 to 6 months, it was only me.
Only you?
Only me.
Why?
That was the design. Because
Clarity नहीं थी आप लोगों
नहीं,
को?
clarity थी, but the thing was, we wanted to do it small. So initially we did not want to start with a big bang, and also I came in with zero experience.
आप भी फिगर आउट कर
Absolutely zero. It was me and Google. कि ठीक है, कंपनी सेटअप करना है. We had a external legal help, तो incorporation हो गया. In fact, I'll tell you a fun story. The day the company got incorporated, I went to the lawyer's office. They showed me the incorporation certificate, and they're like, "Where are your seals?" Like, अच्छा, seals भी बनाने होते हैं. So then I go out. It was raining. I remember I made the seals myself because नहीं था. And then so it was very humble. But I think when I look back, I think a lot of these things helped me also to stay grounded. The first recruiter I had was after the first 37 hires. So
You had 37 people without a recruiter?
without recruiter, I was a recruiter.
क्या बात
So
कर?
the first 5-6 months, there were, like, I would say, multiple hats I was wearing.
तो आप बस लोगों से मिल रहे हो उस टाइम?
No, so it was going through a proper process, because by that time Cabbage US had processes. So there was a portal, there was a process. I knew who had to, so scheduling, sourcing, scheduling, filtering. First filtering was me. Scheduling रात को, feedback, closing the loop. But I think one thing I really felt honestly, and I got it from my own experience, from my initial G and IBM days. And what resonated me with Cabbage was the practice I saw there is, you take every interview very seriously, and you take that as an experience for the candidate.
How many interviews were you doing in a day?
I think that point I was doing about more than 20
A day?
a day, more than 20 for different roles.
तो आपका दिमाग नहीं फट जाता था कि क्या हो रहा है?
अब I signed up for that. Right, I signed up for that. Yes, of course, there was a stress, and the first 1.5 years was very, very taxing for me personally, for the family, because
Late night working?
late night, there was no time. It was time agnostic, because I was working, because I was still figuring out.
You were a founder only, as good as how a founder would do it.
See, I mean, I was figuring out how to set that up, because by that time I had a lot of confidence कि, you know, I can deal with this. Now I was in the game. So far I was on the sideline कि हाँ, मुझे ये खेलना आता है, अब लो, मैदान है तुम्हारा, खेलो. तो now you have to figure out कि ठीक है आप इसको खेलोगे कैसे, तो to grapple that, and there were things that needed to be done today, there are things that you have to start thinking about for the next 6 months. So many pieces, like if I can call it, it was mother of all multitasking. एक आप रिक्रूटमेंट कर रहे हो, उधर से आपका जो ऑडिट्स हो रहा है, जो भी आपकी फाइनेंशियल्स हो रहा है वो सेटअप हो रहा है, एंड आई हैड सम बिट ऑफ आइडिया, बट अंडरस्टैंडिंग दैट द होल कॉर्पोरेट गवर्नेंस, कंप्लायंस, प्रोसीड्यूरल, लीगल, वो चल रहा है. देन द टीम्स विच वर स्टार्टिंग IT infrastructure for them. Like I remember the first folks we got, and we had to get MacBooks for them, 5 of them, and because the US had a policy of doing MacBooks and it was established, so we had to get MacBooks. It was not available with any of the folks here. 5 of them. So I connected with a friend who was in Apple, got into a vendor contact, so swiped my credit card and bought 5 MacBooks. Because day one committed, those folks joining should have their MacBooks. So I think it was a lot of learning.
जुगाड़ भी था.
हाँ, जुगाड़ भी था, learning भी था. I'll tell you, there was an incident where I was at gunpoint. So we were building an office in Indira Nagar, and for somehow some of the folks, locals, they got to know that there is an office being set up, and we were doing a huge internet lease line we are taking. So somebody felt that there is an opportunity of make some money, right?
Local.
और उस टाइम ऑफिस बिल्डअप हो रहा था, तो आई वॉज अर्ली इन द मॉर्निंग. मेरा काम वही था कि सुबह चले जाओ, 2 चेयर ले लो, रुमाल निकालो, चेयर को जस्ट रब 1 चेयर, सिट देयर, दूसरे चेयर पे लैपटॉप रखो, इंटरनेट तो तब लगी नहीं थी, तो फ़ोन को टेथर करो खिड़की के सामने, and you start calling, doing the interviews, right? So we do that. So I was there early in the morning. It was kind of quiet. A few people walk in. Security तो कुछ था नहीं. Few people walk in and they're like, setup किया है, ये है, give us the पैसा. Like they wanted some money.
अच्छा.
They wanted some money, and somebody put out a local gun type of thing on the table that you have to do it. So I think that was my best Oscar performance, where I kind of, on the verge of tears, I said, look, I'm just an employee, the folks are in US, I don't know, I don't have money, you can see, and luckily for me, I was in shorts. It's like, who's the leader of यहाँ का हेड कौन है? मैंने कहा पता नहीं, वो आता भी नहीं है ऑफिस में, मैं तो यहाँ बैठा हूँ, देखो मैं काम कर रहा हूँ, ये थोड़ा सा है, पैसा का कुछ है, ये, because it was all rubbles around. So I played with.
ऐसा होता है बैंगलोर में भी.
I played with that. It was desperate because seeing that being kept on the table, it was scary.
You remember?
It was very.
You can envision it right now.
It was very scary. It was a white table like
कितने
this.
लोग थे? 3-4 लोग.
Three of them were there.
And they were like tall, big, like built, or like.
They were not very.
गुंडे लगते थे या शरीफ
गुंडे लगते थे. वैसे ही आ गए. But it was one of the most horrifying moments.
Wow.
I was, but because I was dressed up like that, and because I had a bit of a stage experience from my college days, I could bring all, because it was like a do or die performance. मेरे को ऑस्कर मिलना ही है इसमें. तो मतलब हाथ जोड़ के कि देखो मैं तो just
फकीर हैं हम तो.
ये भी बोल दिया कि they have not paid me salary for 2 months. मतलब जितना भी अब निकाल सके, because my whole objective was to get these guys out of the door. मेरे को सैलरी भी नहीं दिया है, पता नहीं कौन लोग हैं, यूएस में बैठे हैं, फ़ोन वोन भी नहीं करते, आप एक काम करो, सो देन आफ्टर दे लेफ्ट आई वाज शेकिंग, टेरिफाइड.
वाइफ को बोल गया आपने?
हाँ, definitely said, and then of course I told the US teams about it, and they definitely were very mindful. We start putting a security and all of that, so all those things happened. But interesting experiences. Kabbage को लेके ही मतलब एक वेब सीरीज हो. There was a sign board put out, Kabbage, and many people thought that Indira Nagar 100 feet road, I mean it's the new pub in the town. Many people would call it Kabbage. Right, so it was the buzz was kind of going on, right? But then very soon the goal was it would be a team of, like, I signed up for a team of 30-40, but within like 3-4 months we were about 65-70.
Growth
we went to IITs, IITD, IITM, we got a bunch of 40 people all of a sudden.
Wow, amazing.
So you feel the growth pain when you don't have enough washrooms, right? So we had
वॉशरूम से कोई बड़ा ताल्लुक है आपका? पहले लेटर में भी वही आता आपको.
जी वो एक है, it's very deep, but you feel the pinch, right? So then we moved on to a bigger swanky office in Leela Palace, because one of the things we did very thoughtfully see the product that Kabbage had, the underwriting engine, automated underwriting engine, was not in India. It was a product which was in the US market, and then some other geographies. So if we had to attract a great talent, I had two options. One, to kind of help build a strong culture, which would be the magnet, and second, the quality of work that is done should be good so that the talent gets retained, right? So the culture and the work kind of would define, and we put in a lot of effort to do, I would say, passive branding. Recruitment branding for me has been a very, very critical component in the teams that I've been able to build. So did all of that. The effort that we put in was every person who onboarded at Kabbage, I would make sure that I would meet them in the end of all the rounds. For us, and when I say us, it is not only me but the US leadership. For us, it was very important that whoever onboarded has got the right bent of mind to be a part of the family in that stage of the journey. I think that is very important. You join a company after 5, 6, 7 years, it's in a different stage altogether.
Obviously.
Things are set.
Yeah.
But when you are joining, like the first few hires, I remember I'm hiring a ops manager sort of a person just to kind of share some workload. And I'm doing the interview in the kitchen because under tod chal rahi hai, they're doing the rebuild. So I'm sitting in the kitchen and I'm doing the interview for ops manager. And that is where I could sense if somebody is not comfortable with that ecosystem, they will not thrive, right? So for me, it was very important to first understand what the person is bringing in, the attitude. Secondly, setting the expectation कि भाई आपको यहाँ पे आके you will not have everything set for you. You have to pick up boxes, you have to arrange your rooms, you have to set up stuff, and it can be as simple as how do you plan your activities, how do you collaborate. So there were a lot of things in the mix, but I think that helped a lot, and I would know the story behind every individual who we hired.
Wow.
And there was a personal connect built from day one. And for me, you call me old school or something, but for me, the one-on-one connects, and it need not be for a project, it need not be for a work, but the one-on-one connects have no alternatives even today. Something that I also practiced at Giant Eagle as well, right? That I need to know who's joining the family, and irrespective of how much technical skills or how much of acumen they're bringing to the table, what is more important is do they have the heart and the mind to be a part of this journey. And how sustainable it is. I think that's something I've always focused on. It's very simple, but it works like wonders. So, us tarah se the team that we had, it was handcrafted. And again, we went through churns. There were occasions where we had to cut off some of the pieces also. So this happened through the course of the journey. Not every bit of it was very pleasant. I mean, it's always a difficult decision when you have to X a part of your thing, but it's a part of the journey. And the role that I was playing was often very misunderstood. Because see, you are kind of a center head, right? There are decisions which you have to take, which might not always make everybody happy. And that unhappiness at times in a liberated environment gets amplified.
Very vocal.
In a very different way. And a decision I'm taking with my vantage point and the end-to-end view might not be explained in the right way, or might not, somebody in a different, in a team might not be able to see that in its entirety. So there are always these challenges, right? But so Kabbage was going well. I think we were also discussing about how can we bring the product in India, and I had a BD hat as well, kind of.
सोच रहे थे आप?
So not me, like of course.
Banks का partnership कर रहे थे?
Yes, there was a BD team, and I got tagged in with them because since I was all things kind of Bangalore or all things India, there was a lot of these efforts going on, and I was fortunate to get that exposure as well. So whenever there was somebody from the BD team coming, and I would be with there, it helped me learn how they are kind of doing the pitches about the nuances of the business. Also got me into the space where I could interact with some of the big wigs of the industry, right? So that was a good exposure. But what happened was in pandemic, since the target business or the portfolio we had was US small businesses, the first few weeks of pandemic saw a big challenge in terms of the revenues. And it was a decision made that Kabbage would be shutting down all the remote offices.
All the remote offices.
So we had an office in San Fran.
ये कैसे decision आपको communicate हुआ?
So I still remember, and this was a very I would say
This is April, May 2020. 2020.
This is the decision. The decision was taken in March.
Okay. March
2020.
Okay.
So we go into lockdown on a Tuesday.
22nd को lockdown.
22nd को lockdown हुआ था, and I think the day before I was communicated this decision through my leaders on a phone call that we are taking. It was not very happy decision or not a happy conversation for anyone, but it had to be done, right? And all the remote offices would be shut down, and my responsibility at that point was to figure out how do we make sure that everything and everyone gets taken care of. And the next day we went into lockdown. So lockdown वैसे ही stress, and there was some family situation also regarding my wife's health at that point, which was not going great. So suddenly, again, Murphy's law, everything breaks loose at one point. So
वही सेम फीलिंग है जब मास्टर्स खत्म हुई थी.
हाँ, ये उससे भी टाइट स्पॉट था, वो पर्सनल था.
अब रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी है बहुत लोगों की अब.
Now I suddenly felt responsible, as you rightly mentioned, for these people who I have handpicked, who I have a personal connect with.
Yeah.
And I had to do something about it. Family wise, there was something that I had to make sure that, because we were about to go into a space where, we had a medical situation, but suddenly because of lockdown, that had to be postponed because now they were not allowing it. So it was a very, very tight situation. And the office had to be taken care of, the physical space, the items and everything. अब lockdown में आप बाहर ही नहीं जा सकते, and we had about 2 months to do all of that. So it was kind of probably the most testing phase in the whole Kabbage journey. But
probably in your career journey.
It was very testing. It was very, very tiring testing. First of all, figuring out that how does that take care mean of things and people. For me,
severance दी थी आप लोगों ने?
Absolutely. I think we did. We were very generous. I sat down endless with both the US teams, the US leaders, and the India legal team to figure out what's the best we could do. Because at that point there was so much of uncertainty around everything, right? You never know. Lockdown hai, you don't know what you do when you go out or you come back. And I'm talking about the first 3-4 weeks of lockdown.
So tell me one thing. आपको जब ये decision communicate हुआ, right? I'm sure आपके जो नंबर टूज थे, I'm assuming कैबेज में होंगे 5-6 तो होंगे, जो आपके नंबर टूज होंगे इन इंडिया. आपने उनको कब बताया?
So
पहले तो उन्हीं को बताया होगा ना आपने?
जी, and we had to stay a close group. I think the first objective was that me knowing, and then me creating a core group who would know. Definitely HR and finance would be involved, and those were
7-8-10 लोग थे.
Those were the only 2 people. I think we started working with those 2 people, my HR leader and my finance leader. Because I think we wanted to keep it close because everybody was grappling with this COVID and pandemic and the lockdown.
But did the rest of the 200 or whatever number of people, were they aware?
No, not at that point, because I did not want to communicate without a solution, and that has been
But did they know that business is not going well because of the pandemic?
See, people could sense it because those guys were far more,
intrinsic. They would see the numbers.
They would see the numbers. People were in risk analytics, people were in data science, so they would know, they could sense it. I'm sure there was this vibe that we are not doing well.
लोग आपसे पूछने आते थे कि सर क्या होगा?
Absolutely. They were coming in, but we did not want to
create panic.
Communicate without having a solution in mind. Because see, it's one thing कि भाई ये है. Another thing is ये है, but this is what you get. So I think I wanted to communicate, and this has always been my funda, that you communicate with the solution. You don't talk about the problem. So we took some time, 2-3 weeks, to discuss with the legal folks here, with the US leadership there, and curate those packages, curate the plan of action, and not only with the team but also with the office and what we do and all of that, and then go out and have that meeting. And
Zoom पे join किए सब लोग?
Yeah, that was a.
कितने लोग?
I think we had about 120 or 130 odd who joined in, because some were here, some were in remote. At that point, everybody was also not tech enabled that way. कि suddenly तब ज़माना ऐसा था कि फ्राइडे को आप बोल दो वर्क फ्रॉम होम है तो लोग यार वर्क फ्रॉम होम कैसे कर सकते हो फ्राइडे को. तो वी वर फ्रॉम डूइंग दैट. वी वर डिलिबरेटिंग बिफोर पैंडेमिक, शुड वी डिक्लेयर फ्राइडे एज अ वर्क फ्रॉम होम डे, or फिर who would make note of the productivity, right? But suddenly you needed to have a mechanism where 100+ people could join. So people joined.
Zoom call kiya.
Yes, and then by that time we had the packages and curated and approved. Went in and had that conversation that hey guys, we just lost our jobs.
We.
It's a we, because I also was going out, right? I mean, there was the entity had to be shut down. So it was not you, it was not A team versus B team. It was all of us.
You're the same team.
And I am a big fan of the word we. I'm a big believer in that. And I think it was only, true that we stick to it. It's we. And I think that also conveyed the sense that we all are together in it. But of course, we went out through the whole description, the process, what lies here, what are the modus operandi. And I think whatever we tried to do in those circumstances were the best that we could do. Today, when in a more stable environment, a severance, a retiral can mean different. But given that we were in lockdown, we had to do a lot of things,
Right.
and everything was remote. I think we did the best that we could do. So over the next 45-50 days, fortunately, and I think the industry helped a lot. So everybody got outplaced. Everybody.
Acha.
This was not through an agency. This was through personal connect,
Referrals.
their own efforts. The teams.
They all got jobs.
They all got jobs. The teams came together,
Wow.
forming their own personal Slack channel, where if somebody, we hired campuses very recently.
Amazing.
We hired campus very
Wow.
recently, and they were in panic. So the more seasoned folks, they started doing online classes to coach them on techniques, on stuff,
Wow.
and to go and prepare for interviews. There were WhatsApp groups, so everybody helped each other. So while this core Ex-Cabbage group was helping, I was also trying my level best to knock doors with my industry mentors and friends and figure out how and where we can outplace them.
The good thing at that time was overall the analytics industry was booming.
Yes.
तो that was also a good thing कि अगर ये होना भी था इस टाइम पे हुआ जब
I think what helped was there was a need. There was definitely a need, and what the talent we accumulated was of good quality. So I think, and the folks had a lot of I would say X factor in them to make it. So there was a lot of intent. There was a lot of collaboration. So hopefully within 45-50 days, everybody got outplaced. It might not be the coveted dream role for everybody, but there was that uncertainty of do I have a job went out. I think.
आपको नहीं हुई uncertainty.
Of course I had, but I didn't want to be the first person to exit the ship. So had everybody done, of course, wife was like, आप अपने बारे में सोचो. So
वही पूछ रहा हूँ वो तो
देखो होता है, but then at that stage you feel accountable for the whole thing.
they look up to you.
More than, I feel that कुछ करना चाहिए, because I knew all those stories. For out of those all that 100, 125, 130 people, I knew who's in what stage of their life journey. Somebody
bills they have to
somebody
pay.
just bought a house and took a
Mortgages.
huge loan, right?
Yeah.
Somebody just got married, somebody coming out of a bad separation, so knew all of that.
Yeah.
Somebody just is planning to go into a family way. So there were a lot of these stories, and we tried taking care of all of that individually. There were a lot of support which you otherwise would not find in a regular severance and a retrenchment.
तो ये 3 साल की जर्नी थी कैबेज में.
Five plus.
5 years.
So 5 was the official, and then another 1.5 year where I had to close the entity, taking my whole startup journey to a full circle. कि आप शुरू करो zero से और आप खत्म भी करो, liquidate करो.
सबसे बड़ी लर्निंग क्या थी? एक
I think सबसे बड़ी learning, the whole Kabbage journey is how you take care of your team members. I think it's not a learning from Kabbage also. It's about the more you are you are grounded, the more you are authentic, the more you are open, things happen for you. There will be, because you cannot do things on your own. You need to have a team, and it is very important to build a team.
तो कुछ लोग आपने हायर किए जायंट ईगल में वहाँ से?
Giant Eagle में no, I don't think it happened, because by that time, see, Giant Eagle happened a year and a half after Kabbage.
क्योंकि you were doing the paperwork and all of that.
There was paperwork was there. I was also in between, kind of doing consulting here and there, advisory roles, thoda bahut, just to keep the things flowing. So by that time, everybody was very well cemented, right? And we were very well connected.
अभी भी connected
अभी
आप?
भी, yes, of course.
तो कैसे connected हो इन लोगों से?
If somebody, so just the other day, I got a call from someone who is in a dilemma of the next career move.
And they used to work with you in Cabbage.
Yeah. So picked up the phone,
Very
we have a
nice.
conversation. I think in the last 3-4 months, I've spoken to at least 8 ex-Cabbagers for different reasons, and it's more of a friendly conversation.
That's something you earned, right? You feel कि देखो, even though company didn't go on the right track as you guys wanted,
Yeah.
but your personal relationship still exists.
Feel happy about it. Just the other day when I was in a medical facility, just buying a medicine, I met someone who was a part of ex-Cabbager, and then the person changed 2 companies after that, and then looked back. We were just standing, we met and we were talking, brief 3-minute conversation, but it's like 2 company हो चुकी है, but वो जो experience था कौशिक, that's unforgettable.
आपके लिए भी unforgettable है ना वो?
Of course.
मुझे अभी भी लगता है कि जैसे अभी you are on a break, you are finding your next cabbage. You just want to, you want that level of aggression, you want that level of risk.
I think accountability is the word, where I am accountable for things end to end. I think that is something I love, because
You're an entrepreneur at heart in some ways.
yeah, I mean, if you were seeing that way, because I think your lens is pretty much, strong, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, I love being in that thick of action on multiple things, not to be siloed in a particular box. तो वो box वाला feeling जब हो जाता है, then you feel like, you know what, I am only being utilized 20% or 10% of myself, and there is a big 80% जो कि देख ही नहीं रहा है और मैं use नहीं कर पा रहा, and then you start feeling it.
तो अभी आपके करियर का एक नया ट्रेजेक्ट्री होगी, राइट? एंड आई एम अज्यूमिंग दिस विल बी प्रॉब्ली वन ऑफ योर लास्ट फ्यू बिग स्टिंट्स और व्हाटएवर जो भी आप अगली
Maybe my last 10 years.
What do you mean last 10 years? अभी how old are you? 45.
45.
So till when do you think you will live?
See, living is different.
तो क्या करोगे आप?
But I
55 के बाद क्या करोगे?
55 के बाद मैं वो करूंगा जो शायद मैं कर नहीं पाया
क्या?
पिछले 30 साल में.
Theater.
Maybe, go into music. I mean, I've been trying to learn keyboard for the last so many years.
Seriously?
Right, sit down and learn keyboard.
Wow.
Have a proper grammatical learning of music, right? जो ज्ञान मुझे है नहीं, मुझे मैं लेना चाहता हूँ, right? So maybe those things. Travel. A country is beautiful. I've traveled quite a bit. But I want to travel. A country is beautiful. There are so many things that you feel you have not seen yet. Want to do that. Want to spend time with my wife, because we've been together in this journey for about n number of years. I've known her for almost 30 years now.
Wow.
Right? So there are things, we have seen lots of ups and downs in life, and for once I want to spend that part of my journey in a very, very private content space, doing things that I want to do, and
Amazing.
not driven by an organizational goal or the calendar.
So let's try to understand the next 10 years, right? Now I was talking to you also, and now is the time in terms of technology where what is going to happen in 1, 2, 3 years is something which everyone has a very different take on. And to be honest, we both know no one knows the answer. And I'm talking about generative AI, chat GPT, prompt, whatever you call it. Now आप इस इंडस्ट्री में रह चुके हो, आपको 22 साल हो चुके हैं, तो आपकी क्या टेक है? आपको 2025 में क्या लगता है क्या होगा और 2030 में क्या होगा?
See, one thing that the whole pandemic has told us, that irrespective of whatever you plan for the next 5, 6,
कभी नहीं
7
होता।
years,
हो ही नहीं सकता।
you never know what happens next, right? You never know what happens next. So I think the best you can do is to stay equipped and stay prepared and stay open. I think if you see the last 20 saal of what we spoke about, every time an opportunity came and I was open for it. Maybe I did not have the required skill sets, be it changing my trajectory from academics to operations, going to on-site for transition, doing a transition, coming back, relocating to a different city, moving to a different domain altogether, getting into a startup, more entrepreneurial, coming back to a GCC. So there's a lot of mixed bag that has happened. So one thing that tells me that if I'm fixated कि मुझे यही करना है, then probably I would lose out on many other things that I could do. So at this point I'm pretty much open, but of course things that I would get into should kind of appeal or should bring all the offerings that I have in terms of my journey onto the table.
So ये तो आपका understand from a personal level. Now, what do you think will happen to the industry in which you're operating, which is GCC, captive analytics, whatever you call it? 2025 में क्या लगता है डिफरेंस होगा आज से 2 साल में, और 2030 में क्या होगा? कुछ भी, जो भी आप
again going back to the same theme, the need for the reasons we do business doesn't change. We would still be buying, selling, moving things. We would still be analyzing financial statements, right? We would still be recognizing and retaining talent. वो करेंगे. We would still be investing and divesting. We would be doing all these things. जो बदलेगा वो है ये सब करने का तरीका, right? If you look back, right, say last 10 years or 20 years, the way we used to make business decisions changed a lot, right? Even before computers also, people made business decisions, same things happened. But जो करने का तरीका है वो बदलेगा. And that is where we call it generative AI great, and it's coming in. I think you and I and most of us are still figuring out, and organizations are figuring out कि इसके साथ करें क्या. what to do with it, right? How do we use it? It's a great potential, it's a great force, it's a great, energy. How do we channelize it?
Yeah.
Where should we use it? Where should we not use it? What is the reasonable use of it? What is the optimal use of it? What is the, how can we use it to make things better and not worse? So this figuring out stage will take some time. But what it will do is it will, in a very radical way, in my opinion, change the skills that come into play.
Like?
Skills of employees. Like today, we are talking more about certainly the prompt engineers are probably the more celebrated folks. We are talking about AI data analysts.
Prompt engineers क्या होते हैं? अगर आप explain कर सकते हो हमारी audience को.
See, I am not kind of a tech guru, but
Broad level.
what I understand is these are the folks who really create those points or those pointers or those prompts where the actual learning takes place. And maybe I'm just butchering it altogether, but for me, they are the folks who really guide and dictate how the AI will take its course.
Logic strong.
Exactly. And it's again logical reasoning, right? BI developers, what I've heard recently, I've heard a term AI data analyst. I mean, we
AI data analyst.
AI data analyst.
तो this, if I'm not wrong, this is a full stack data scientist. पहले क्या था कि data analyst अलग, visualization अलग, engineering अलग, science अलग. अब लोग कहते हैं सब एक ही बन जाएगा.
एक ही बन जाएगा, and then you will have, see, there will be new roles that will be coming up. I think there is always a anxiety कि अच्छा ये नया tool आ जाएगा.
बताओ ये हमारे business से बड़ा related है. I want to know more about it.
See, this I tie back to that point where I would be sitting with let's say a 55-year-old as a 20-year-old and teach that person how to run computers, to do your regular bookkeeping and banking, right? So, and I could see that sense of fear and anxiety and apprehension in those cases.
Yeah.
And the time they would take to type something and then press the enter. Acha hua, enter mara, laga. So this is how that would happen. So I think that was something disruptive. We are a generation who have seen this big old telephones, right? And now we are using, let's say, very soon we will have the Apple device coming in, the VR headset coming in. So we are a generation who have seen a lot of technology that is coming through us, and we have adapted well, right? We have adapted well. It did not have to give away too many things. In fact, it has brought in a lot of things, and mostly noise, digitally connected. So in my opinion, what the new generative AI will do is it will unlock new avenues. It will unlock new avenues on how we do things, and then you would need human element to run those things or to be at the A end and the Z end of all of those things, right? Because somewhere there has to be a start and a stop, and somebody has to navigate, somebody has to govern it, someone has to put in that logic in it, right? Even though the model can train itself through the iterations, somewhere you have to seed it out, and then there is the need to ensure that we use this tremendous power in a more generous, more reasonable way. So there will be newer opportunities, current opportunities being redefined, rescoped. But yes, things will.
What I have personally thought and observed is that as new technologies come, the complexities of the problems that we solve start becoming more complex. That is the game, right? Now the worry people have is that is fine, complexities will increase, but the number of people required to solve for those complexities, we are seeing especially with this generative AI, might reduce. What is your take on that?
It might reduce for a particular use case, but the number of use cases will increase. Right?
Fair enough. That's a valid point.
But the number of use cases will definitely increase.
That's a very valid
right?
point.
But change will happen. And if we are not embracing a change, then we are just resisting the inevitable and creating more anxiety. Right? See, I follow cricket from a pre-T20 era. Right? I have spent time going into Eden
Favorite cricketer right now?
Favorite cricketer right now. So I think I'm still stuck in that team of 2000. It would be there. I think I like, sometimes I definitely like the way Virat Kohli goes about his game, right? But I cannot say that, I love this cricketer as a whole. Because somewhere I feel the kind of cricket I saw in those 2000 era the team of
Dravid, Kumble,
that whole thing, the team
VVS
of Saurav
Lakshman, Saurav Ganguly.
Sachin and the whole thing, and I've seen that from close quarters. I mean, there are some epic things I've seen through these eyes, which I think is incomparable, right? So
You still watch cricket?
of course,
IPL देखा आपने?
yeah, IPL final देखा,
बहुत बड़े final. Fantastic final.
final देखा, because somewhere I felt I should watch MSD in action.
मैंने IPL का एक मैच भी नहीं देखा.
Same here.
मैंने फाइनल वो भी लास्ट इनिंग्स मैंने फर्स्ट इनिंग्स भी नहीं देखी.
नहीं.
सेकंड इनिंग्स देखी, वो भी 12-13 ओवर के बाद बारिश हो रही थी आई थिंक उस दिन कुछ.
So
And what a match!
I think so if you recall, I've seen some epic battles, but my cricket experience is kind of centered around that time, because we had some fascinating stories, success stories, and if you remember in those days, I still remember Centurion 2003 World Cup, Pakistan scored I think 275, or India had to chase 275, and that was a huge total.
This is 2003
World Cup, Johannesburg,
जो इंडिया फाइनल में गया था ऑस्ट्रेलिया के खिलाफ.
This match was in Centurion. India was playing Pakistan. It was a do-or, and then I think India scored about 100 odd runs in first 10 overs. This was when Sachin and Sehwag belted Wasim, Waqar, and Shoaib. So I think, so my brother had a CD of that match because we were so revering it. But the point is, that point 275 was considered to be like a huge score. अभी तो T20 में लोग 220-25 आराम से बना देते हैं. So the game has changed.
Fully.
And to cope up with that, the skill that has come into play
is very different.
Right? Today, probably, and I have watched Ranji Trophy matches in Eden Gardens.
You have?
I have watched, because,
आप दादा के बड़े fan हो?
I am a big fan of Dada's leadership. Okay. Again, because I've never been a fanboy kind of person.
Okay.
I am a big fan of Sachin's endurance, there are specific innings of Sachin where I feel there's a lot more than just cricket that he has brought onto the table. I mean, Sydney, the whole double century in the 2003 series where he did not take I think that talks about the mental toughness that the person goes through. And there's a lot of mind that is there, which we do not see, but a lot goes on in the middle. So I think I'm a big fan of that. A lot of my leadership values have also come out of that, right? But today the game has changed. I mean, you have Surya Kumar Yadav. The sky is the limit, right?
Amazing.
So the skill, and this is what I was talking about, that the game will change. The game will change.
You need to evolve.
The skill has to evolve. The amount of power play. So we also had power plays in our days,
20 ओवर का होता ना पावर प्ले. 15 ओवर
50 ओवर के मैच में आप
शुरू के 15
ओवर 5-5 तो 2 गैप्स होते थे. And we had a Sehwag here, we had a Gilchrist there, we had a Jayasuriya there, so one off. But still it would be somebody holding the innings together, right? So that is where you balanced your keeping lights on versus your risk taking capabilities. Slog करेंगे ठीक है, लास्ट 10 ओवर में slog करेंगे, right? So these are the lessons, and it's very closely related. But now the game has changed
completely,
and because of that we are seeing more results coming out in the 5-day game as well.
Much better performance.
People are applying themselves. So I think bringing the whole context back here, the industry will shift. The needs will not shift. You still have to go out there, play the game, bowl 6 overs, 6 balls in an over, and win the game. You have to score runs, you have to take wickets. That doesn't change. But the way you approach, the way you go about the game, the skill that comes into the play changes.
So, like last couple of questions. Your daughter is 8 years right now?
She would be 9, behaves like 19. Yeah.
So let's say that when your career will probably end, that's when her career will start in some context.
Absolutely, yes.
In some ways. Now, what do you think the career world, corporate world would look like when she joins it? What do you think, like broad level?
So if I think in the context of my daughter, and right now her choices keep changing every day what she wants to be, but I think that's reflective of the situation because she's seeing so many things.
Choices are too many.
For us it was कि you go to IIT JEE या तो go to civils, और इन दोनों में ना हो पाए तो go to short service commission या तो फिर teacher selection में आ जाओ. So these were the safe options, right? Because of finance or because of whatever reasons, MBA never came as an option in our table, in my family, right? So that was our scenario. But I think with her, specifically her in question, I would want her to be in a space equipped to make a choice of her own. And the choices would be many, and it would not be limited just to the corporate world. It can be creative. Today, if someone wants to pursue a creative line, right? And I think in the beginning we were talking about drones, and if somebody wants to do something out of that in the creative space, there are a lot of avenues.
Yeah.
So I think what it has done is this connected world. What it has done is it has opened up a lot of options and avenues for the next generation. And what I really admire about the next generation is the fearlessness of taking it. I have worked for 3 years, and I see this in the folks today. I have worked for 3 years. I'm going to take a break for 2 years. मैं काम नहीं करूँगा, मैं घूमूंगा. So I was talking to a campus recruit last year in Giant Eagle, and we were having a lunch conversation. And I'm like, so this was before the person. So we have selected the person, and he is going to join after a few months. Exams are over. मैंने कहा करोगे क्या कर रहे हो? मैं घूमूंगा. I'll just
Happier कहते हैं उसे.
And he's like, I'll be a solo traveler.
बढ़िया.
So these things, I mean, if you love food, you can have a career out of that. If you love travel blogging, you can have a career out of that. भाई हमें किसी ने नहीं कहा था. अगर बोल दिया होता तब ये choices होते, maybe we would have been in a different trajectory altogether. Wow. But when path opened, we walked, we learned, we fell, we kind of stumbled, we picked ourselves up, and
you could have been a singer also.
Could have been a singer.
You want to start?
अभी तो नहीं आ रहा है.
Fair enough.
But,
I won't push
but
you.
I think at some point definitely
So,
if in a better space.
We plan to do that town hall thing. No? That's where you will sing.
Done. We'll come.
That you have to sing.
Absolutely.
Done. So Kaushik, one last question, and more of a question. It's more for advice. So I'm 23 years old right now. What is one piece of advice you want to give to me?
23. Wow, and that's interesting, because if you have a dream, follow it. I mean, don't compromise on that. Our generation, and maybe I'm too generalizing it, but many of our generation have compromised or have not let their dreams come before their priorities. But if there is a way, and if there is one thing that you always wanted to do, and maybe right now you don't even know what you want to do, maybe, right? But don't get bogged down by what others are telling you to do or what situation is prompting you to do. If you want to go somewhere today, there are multiple ways of making things happen. Go for it.
Perfect. I think this was a very fun chat. I think we need to do another version of this probably, but I think overall what I can personally understand and relate to from your experience is that openness to change should always be there.
Absolutely.
That is one thing, and you still have that. You still are very open. You don't know what you're...
Without that, life ends. You are always, tomorrow is a new day, right? I mean, so people say there is one truth that, you die. Of course, you die at the end of the day. But there is another truth that you only live once, and I don't believe in that. You live every day. When you wake up, that's a new day. And that is your new life. So make most of it.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Kaushik. आप आए यहाँ पे, बहुत मजा आया.
Absolutely.
Lot to learn from you.
Pleasure.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Perfect.